Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first session at ASPM Nation. I'm super excited to be kicking us off here. I'm your host, Amir Kazemi, Director of Product Marketing at SciCode, and I've got the pleasure of welcoming two incredible CISOs to our virtual stage. Heather and Daniel's track record speak for itself, as they're both security heavyweights with decades of experience across companies like Intermex, PagerDuty, IBM, RingCentral, and a lot more. I don't want to entirely steal their thunder, so I'll go ahead and let them briefly introduce themselves before we get started. Heather, why don't we start with you, and why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Oh, thank you, Amir. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Heather Hinton. I am incredibly passionate about application security. I have been in security itself for a very long time, the decades I think that you mentioned. Thank you. Um, but I think that this is such a important part of where we as a society are going is making sure that we are building and maintaining secure applications. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you all, and I'm really grateful for the ASPM Nation for helping us to raise awareness of the importance of application security.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us. And then Daniel, would love to hear an intro on yourself for the audience here.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Daniel Herford. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Intermex Wire Transfer. I agree with my co-sponsor here, Heather, that security has been something I've been passionate about throughout my career. Although I didn't start in security, so throughout my 23-year career, I was more interested in sort of doing the technology and managing infrastructure and data centers and data protection. And I was always interested in security because I worked in banking, but I have now found myself into the CISO role. And funnily enough, I feel almost as innovative or as impactful to the business now in the CISO role as I would have in the CIO role 5 years ago, which was what I thought was what I wanted, and I achieved that. But now I'm really engaged in the CISO role. I agree. I'm very passionate about all levels of security. A little different than Heather. I don't have a development background, and I'm really passionate about bringing security to the business. And AppSec is actually kind of a newer area for me, only in the last 2 to 3 years. So I look forward to sharing my experience and also learning.
Amazing. Excited to have you both,
Thank you.
especially here at our second ASPM Nation. Let's go ahead and get started. Wanted to start it a little bit on the broader side here. So, given the implications code security has on business resilience specifically, the stakes for AppSec are pretty high. In your experience, why is AppSec more critical today than ever before? Why don't we start with you, Heather?
I don't think that it's more critical. I think that it's just the impact of it is more visible. We are more aware of it, and the conversation around application security and how closely tied it is to resilience is front and center with everybody. And so we've just got more awareness. I think that the reality is we have been building everything that we do on, in particular, software applications. But let's not forget OT, right? And go look at all of the smart devices in your house. Well, those are, and let's look at what's in the critical infrastructure. Everything that we do is based on applications that hopefully have had robust application security disciplines, from design to development to test to release to ongoing maintenance. But unfortunately, the reality is that it's not actually the case, especially for legacy stuff or stuff that's really new that people are trying to get to market. And, I think that we are now just all so much more aware of how all interconnected this is and how easy it is for things to go bad in really scary ways, right? As we all saw earlier this summer, we as a society, we are so critically dependent on software, on applications for everything, and we don't necessarily have a good plan B.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. Daniel, would love to hear your perspective on that.
I completely agree that it's always been important, but there does seem to be a well overdue awareness of application security that, to some extent, you've been talking about the same foundational issues maybe for a decade, maybe longer. But there's been a real holdout. And I think the time is right for most organizations to take a look at what else they can do in security. And I'm by no means saying that other areas of security are completely mature or that everyone is perfect, but I agree that the days of saying I'm going to protect the outcome, but I'm not going to protect the design, I'm not going to build security into the application, I think you're really behind. And I do agree. It seems like there's been an explosion of builders. We're building more as coding gets easier and low code platforms are more available. It seems like smaller and smaller businesses are choosing to build more and more, not just the corporations. So I think that awareness has grown, and there are solutions that can help you, and that's a big deal.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. And I think even AI may have even driven the awareness even more. So that's, yeah, great to hear. Uh, what challenges, I mean, you both have a ton of experience, right? So what challenges have you experienced in building AppSec programs through your, past decade of, roles in the CISO position? So Daniel, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so a couple of them I think are easy answers that probably Heather and I have both seen. One that immediately comes to mind, as much as I'm a technology professional, I'm a people professional because you gotta understand what you're doing and how it impacts people. There is still a likely immediate resistance to adding security to a CI/CD pipeline that is already got too many demands and not enough resources and is struggling to get to market fast enough. So that's a key challenge: getting the people on board, getting the people and management of your company recognizing that this is not a nice to have, that it's something that we really need to have. And I will say something that's aided that is I do believe the moniker that developers want to create secure code. I really do believe that. I don't
Yeah, that
think they
100%.
want. Yeah, they don't
Yeah.
not want to, but they're not your stakeholder. If you're in a CISO role and you're trying to launch an AppSec program, they're probably going to get behind you, and you can address that by making it simple and as low friction as possible. But you've got to convince the business that it is okay if something takes a requisite amount of additional time to build it right the first time, so that you're not impacting. So the people have constantly been a challenge. Again, awareness we already talked about. I think that awareness gate is not there. I think AppSec is well known and if it's not, I think your board and your oversight want to talk about it. But the people are still there. They still want the people. You still got to address the people part of the challenge.
Yep, I love that response. Thank you, Daniel. Heather, would love to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, thank you. I was jumping in. So, look, I 100% agree with Daniel. I have never met a developer that doesn't want to build secure code. They want to do the right thing, which is why I think that, from a challenge point of view, the challenge is getting alignment with the development team so that we can go to product management and sales, who I think are critical stakeholders here, and get them to understand why it is in their best interests, given all of their sales commitments and forecasts that they have to hit. Despite that, why is it in their best interest to build secure code now? How do we turn this story into one of customer trust? And how do we turn this into something that we get to use so that we can partner with our customers? That's the biggest challenge that I've had, is getting those teams on board with perhaps not releasing a new feature every 2 weeks. Maybe it's every 3 weeks, maybe it's every 4. But you know that those features are going to be robust. And I think that what is really exciting about where we are now in the industry and technology, whatever, is that our customers are now starting to force those conversations as well. And they are starting to act as a pressure point on the outside in. And so now we're getting really close, I think, to critical mass with developers, with regulations, with things like the Secure by Design pledge from CISA, with what our customers are asking for. We have now all of the ingredients to actually put together a fully functioning and effective application security program.
Yep, I love that. I think this is a perfect segue into our next question, which is who are the most important partners to the AppSec team and why? I heard developers, I heard product. Would love to hear your thoughts on like, is there any additional ones? Um, and are those, are those two actually important? So, Daniel, back to you on this one.
My advice to anyone listening is I'll mention some titles, but every organization is unique, right?
Yep,
So if you're going to navigate the people labyrinth, you're going to have to figure out how your organization works, who makes the decisions, who has influence. Maybe their title doesn't, the guy might be the chief of whatever, but if he listens to his chief developer or his lead, again, there's a little science and a little art behind figuring out the right people. But to answer your question directly, it does take a cross-sectional approach. The days of just getting the executive on board, not going to be successful, right? Are very unlikely. I don't like to speak in absolutes, but it's very unlikely you're going to be successful if you just talk to the executive level or the VP level. You need those guys, and you need them at their level. But in my experience, the best thing to do, um, and I was kind of resistant to this, but it's now my go-to market strategy. We do what I guess is commonly being called a security champion kind of approach. This is a security champion. I don't know what other word to use there. They're in the development group. They have some respect, they have some knowledge, they have a desire to not only do secure code like every developer, but maybe they're kind of a hobbyist. Maybe they sort of are a
yeah,
little above the average in terms of their capabilities and interest. That's been really successful because if we can get management on board, the CIO on board, product management, sales management, everyone Heather said, everyone who's driving and looking for outcomes from what you're building, and then also get multiple levels of the operational staff that are actually doing the work to understand that. That is really a key success criteria for us. I will also say I got some good luck and good traction reaching out to project management. A lot of times that's separate from all of this, and it's kind of like an overlay. And if anything, if you can just get them to remember one sentence, security should be in every project. If you just say that and get them to kind of put that into their mindset, you may find additional projects, additional work streams where security can get involved. And again, just help create that culture where hopefully security is involved in every build.
I love that. It's great advice, especially around finding that security champion. Do you find that security champion kind of sitting in the development team themselves, or is it somebody in the security side, working with the dev team?
So again, I think every org could be different. Of course, in
Sure.
my org right now, it's in the development team, and the reason that's
Gotcha.
important is because that person is respected. They're thought of as a subject matter expert. They know not just the process that they throw in front of the board and the process that gets sort of marketed, but they know what's really going on inside of the group. And let's just be honest, it's very difficult to know exactly the day to day of another group that has its own needs, its own people that are its own stakeholders. So I have found that to be the best approach. They have so much institutional knowledge. It reduces friction. They're sort of trusted if you pick the right person, and if they can start sort of repeating things that you're talking to them about, and it sort of becomes, hey, it's not this outside thing, but this is really what we all want as a team. It just it has really worked very well. And again, I can't take credit for that idea. It was something I read about, something that I think that's kind of getting out there in just the mainstream thought, and it has been very transformational for us.
Amazing. Yeah, Heather, would love to hear your thoughts on, partners in the business.
I think it one way to make sure that we have cross-company buy-in is to make everybody a partner, right? Make everybody aware, right? Maybe not everybody is involved in application security, but everybody's involved in security. And when everybody is thinking about security and what does it mean to me, it's a lot easier to then really embed it in the development cycle as part of your application security. Um, if I had to pick one person, it would be product management because they're the ones that are setting the goals for revenue for customers. They're the ones that are enabling the sales teams. They're the ones that are helping drive the content. They should be one of your key partners. Uh, because
Mhm.
amongst other, like, they also have the ability to say no if they really want to, right? So we need to have them on board. Close second, though, is the security champions, because as Daniel said, they're trusted, they're inside. When they speak about security, it's not security in that old, ugly Department of No mode. It's, hey, here's something that's going to make things better. And the trusted insider angle that Daniel was talking about, it influences how people hear what they're saying, not just, the words, but the intent. And
Mhm.
there is a level of intent of trusted trying to do the right thing that is really important for getting everybody on board with then doing what needs to happen.
Yep, I love that. So it sounds like there isn't one cookie cutter answer across the board on who's the
It's
partner or
security. There never is.
Yeah, yeah. I guess, do you guys have any specific tips on how you get buy-in or how you incentivize these partners? Maybe Heather, if you have anything off the top of your head.
I think everybody's really tired of hearing data and metrics, but really it's all about data and metrics, right?
Yeah.
We can trot out old reports that say, here's what it costs to fix something when it's already shipped, and here's what it costs to fix it in design. Um, but people don't trust those. They think, oh, that was someone else. It's not me. But it doesn't take very long before you can do things like saying, hey, this pen test found 5 things, all of which should have been found if I had been doing testing early on, if I'd had been running a SaaS tool. And now I've had to slip these 3 features because they're critical and I have to get them fixed. So when I can come up with numbers that are sourced from my world, then I can get people on board because it becomes about self-interest, right? I'm motivating them by saying, "Hey, you can do this now, but if you had done it back then," right? And so when the next time one of those things comes around, you can say, "Hey, look, this is something that we didn't fix last time. It showed up in the pen test. It was really irritating to fix it. Let's just fix it now, or let's understand the implications of not fixing it." And you make those arguments based on the data.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Daniel, any thoughts on your side?
Yeah, so I'll just give this additional agree with everything Heather just said. We took a pretty traditional path here to get this to start getting this aired out. It started with a risk assessment, and just to, again, just more of a person and a people piece of advice. My normal path could be to take the results of a risk assessment and immediately bring it to the risk committee and immediately show it that it's an orange or a red that we don't want, and start talking, as Heather said, in terms of just, hey, this is not where we want it to be. I took an extra step, which is I went directly to the VP of development with that data before I went to the risk
Hmm.
committee.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, this is the kind of thing that I'm going to need to talk about, but man, I just think it would be so much stronger if you already know about it, we are already in agreement, we don't have to talk about, well, let's meet and discuss a risk treatment plan. We can kind of go to it and kind of demonstrate together that we, now that we're aware of this risk, we both want to fix it. And I also went to that man and said, what do you need? Like, what else do you need? You always
Yeah.
need more resources, more money, more time. What can I get you in a security tool? And we started talking code quality. And there's
Yeah.
a connection between code quality and secure code. And I'm like, well, maybe the tooling we get, we can make sure it can help us on code quality as well as security. And we're funding it, so no skin off of your teeth. That kind of
Yeah.
alliance building. And again, I just can't underscore how important it is to remember that the person on the other side of the conversation is a person just like you. They want to do their job well, but they've got people demanding things. So again, I've just found a lot of success by trying to do something that's going to help them. And I don't mean some speech about how secure code is easier to make than unsecure code. I mean, or, some marketing term, right? That might be sort of half true, right? But the reality is you
Yeah.
probably are going to add a little work to to their to their day. So you really need to
Yeah.
work intentionally to say, what else can I do to help you? And hey, can we approach this from the start together and make that a mutually beneficial outcome? And that has worked pretty well.
Yep. I love that. So I wanted to cover a couple other topics, one around compliance and then the next one around customers. We'll start with compliance. So how do you think application security is driven by certain compliance programs? So think SSDF, SBOM, NIST, and so forth. Would love your kind of thoughts on that, or are they even driven by these compliance programs? Heather, love to hear your thoughts on that.
Talk about a loaded question. I think all too often compliance-driven initiatives
Yeah.
get tied to a checkbox. And I think one thing that
Okay.
we all have ample evidence is that checkboxes approach to security don't work. So to me, compliance isn't the checkbox. Compliance is like the final capstone project that says, I did this well, but I'm doing everything else. And those metrics that I talked about, that data, that's feeding into compliance so that I can say, yep, I've done things correctly. Interestingly, I don't know that I would consider SSDF really as compliance. To me, it's like a framework and it's a really good guideline and a really good framework for people to follow. When I think compliance program, I think, are you remediating? Are you scanning on a weekly basis? Do you do this as part of every build? How are you patching within the appropriate timelines? And those sorts of things just become they it feels like they become busy work. But when I'm talking about when I'm putting whatever it is that I'm doing, a framework, a checklist, a set of metrics, when I put it into that business context of here's how I'm helping improve the business, driving down cost or increasing revenue, take your pick, or here's how I'm making your life easier, right? To Daniel's point, these people have that you are dealing with, they're people. They go home at night, they've got stresses that they've got to deal with that are completely independent of getting a product out the door. Making sure that we are all aligned on doing the right thing and asking how do we help, meeting them where they are, is really important. And sometimes compliance programs are viewed as not meeting other people where they are. So I didn't really answer, right? It's going to depend on how you use the compliance program, right? It can be used for good and it can be used for ill. And it's
Yeah.
really how you are collaborating with everybody else, how it's viewed.
No, it's really thoughtful. Yeah, so basically, don't, in simplest terms, don't think of compliance as like a checkbox, right? Kind of work backwards into making sure your programs, super optimized, efficient, and then your compliance inherently should be there as well.
Right.
So that's great. Daniel, would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, as I said, spending 23 years in banking, compliance is unfortunately something that we have had to deal with. But I really want to just echo what Heather said that compliance now, in my opinion, should be your sort of minimal viable target, right? And it really should just be something that creates the opportunity for you to start having these conversations. I 100% agree. You can be compliant with a lot of four-letter alphabet soup things and get past your auditors and your oversight, and it does not really mean that you're risk averse or secure, to overuse a word. So to me, again, compliance, I talk about it as a minimal viable approach, and I use it that way. It's really more used to mobilize the effort, and then you really have a
Yeah.
better chance of creating secure code by aligning to a well-developed and prescriptive framework. Most compliance frameworks are not prescriptive. They're sort of descriptive, and there's a lot of gray area. Choose a framework, go after that, and use compliance as a board tool and as an influence and as a budget tool. You can use it to say you need it and you can't do without it, but you need to know, as the real professional designing the security, that don't use the compliance as your scorecard, because ultimately I believe with Heather that you will
Yeah.
not have a secure organization if you're just compliant.
Yep, I love that. Moving on to the customers topic, how do you guys think AppSec is tied to product, quality insurance, and even customer experience at the end of the day? Heather, do you have any thoughts on that?
To me, it's a very, very straight line with not very many pauses along the way, right? It doesn't take too many instances, I mean, really one, where a customer has lost data, the customer has had an outage, the customer has had a bad experience. I've had to go to the customer cap in hand and said, oops, before they lose trust. And uh, for me, customer trust is sort of like the most important thing. If my customer doesn't trust me, if I can't partner with them, we're not going to be successful jointly, which is what we need to be. And I cannot ask them to trust me if I'm delivering applications that have unacceptable risks. We all know that we're going to deliver stuff that has problems, right? That we're not at a point of delivering something perfect. But if I understand what's going on and I have addressed the things that are higher risk, then I can have a conversation with a customer about everything I am doing to make sure that I am being the right steward of their data with the applications that we have built. So I
Yeah.
think that, and to Daniel's point about banks, you can't sell to a bank these days without being able to have a very rigorous application security conversation with them because they are keenly aware of the role that you are playing and the fact that they are giving you their data. And they're not going to trust just anybody with that data. You have to prove to them that you are worthy, if you will, of actually, being their vendor.
Yeah. Love that. Daniel, any thoughts on your side?
Yeah, again, a lot of alignment. It's good to hear another industry professional, echoing thoughts. It means generally we're all working towards the same goals. Couldn't agree more about trust and how long it can take to establish it and how fast, unfortunately, it can be lost. But I guess what I'll point to is that uh, in my lifetime, in my career lifetime, a data breach was something that if you got a letter, it was a it was kind of a one-off thing. It was rare. And now I hate to say it, but let's be honest,
Yeah.
as consumers, we might get 5 of those letters a year now. So it points to the fact that there's still a lot of work to do. And I say that only to share that I do think customers are a little more savvy, right? I think obviously the aim is to protect them and protect the code and not have to send that letter. But equally as important is how you respond when that happens, and whether you're a public company and you've got SEC disclosures, or whether you've got an ESG program in your company, which most ESG programs for companies with security are all about transparency, which means things that you maybe previously would have kept to yourself unless you had a compliance reason to, and that there it goes back to that minimal thing. But now, more and more companies are wanting to be transparent because it's another way to garner trust. Hey, we failed, but we're going to be very transparent about it. We're telling you exactly what we're doing, and this is how we're going to make that better. So again, continuous improvement, building these AppSec programs, not trying to hide it. I mean, a mistake is a mistake, and you should own it, and you should learn from it, and your customers should be able to feel that. They should feel that you've learned something
Yeah.
from that mistake. Otherwise, Heather's right. Not only are they going to already be diminished trust, but then they're just going to go find someone else because now you're not even doing the right things to try to improve yourself. So customers have got to be remembered. I do think customers are accepting of security now in ways that they weren't in the past. Can you remember arguing, "Hey, we can't give MFA to customers because they'll leave"? Well, that's that's not
Yeah.
that should not be the case anymore, right?
No.
Hopefully, most customers are getting more savvy with this stuff, but you do have to keep in mind that however many customers you have, you do want to try to protect them from themselves, but deliver a trustworthy experience, and again, be honest with them when mistakes happen.
Amazing. Wow, what a way to kind of close this out. So, thank you so much for everything you've shared with us today. You've brought such an important perspective to the overall discussion around, AppSec and the context around business drivers. Thank you again to you both. I'm sure the audience, has learned so much today. I'm going to hand it over to Shauna, who's going to take us into our next session. So stay tuned.